All right, we're going to get started. So welcome. This is Density's social distancing and work from home webinar. As you can see, my partner in crime here, Leanna, and I are living the work from home life, um, and enjoying it so far. I think we're doing just fine. But today we're going to one, go through like our general assessment, just review what we've seen so far with our customers and across the industry. Um, Leanne is then going to walk us through a couple examples of customers, how they've responded, and some of the learnings that we've gained. And then I'm going to actually go through how Density's responded and how we've been able to leverage our platform to hopefully make some better decisions for our employees. And I'll kind of go through our product and how you might be able to do that as well. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. I'll let you guys ask some questions, and yeah, we'd be happy to help any way we can. So really quickly, just so you guys understand what density is, we install sort of network of sensors across anyone's portfolio and are able to deliver real-time event and count data with an incredible accuracy. This data is totally anonymous, so we don't identify people walking into the spaces. Everyone's just kind of little blobs, and our algorithm evaluates those blobs as they move across a threshold. We then expose that data through mobile applications and web applications, all in real time. So you can set up push notifications or SMS alerts, or look at that data historically and plan for a better future. So with that, we sort of looked at our portfolio across the board and dissected it by industry, just to get a better sense as to how this outbreak has affected our customer base. And the results are sort of astounding, but I think expected in a way. So what you're looking at here is a differential based on the foot traffic averages across industry. So blue means it's gone up, and red means it's gone down. This is going all the way back to February, so you can see a lot of people just sort of operating within the status quo. But as March hits, you start to see a drop off. You can see sort of people who were impacted early on, or made decisions to close early on versus later. And you've seen some increases actually in essential services as well. But we're going to focus on those essential services and the workplace. And in the workplace specifically, we saw an over 80% decrease in occupancy across the board. It's actually higher than that. That's kind of a safe number. And these are for some of the largest companies in the world. So some big change happening. And I'm going to pass it off to Leanna to sort of break down those changes in detail. Leanna, you want to take it away?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So the first case study we wanted to share with you all is the world of essential services and how companies and like grocery, pharmacy, hospitals are using density data to comply with the new world of social distancing policies. So these are spaces that actually are having increased traffic to what they've seen historically, but they know that for safety reasons, they have to limit the number of people in their spaces at any given point in time to maintain that appropriate social distance. So what you're seeing here is data from a grocery and convenience store that we work with based in the Midwest. And on the left-hand side is the y-axis is the number of people in this space. So 20 people, 15 people, 10. And what this company was seeing historically is that on a particularly busy day, they might get as high as 15, maybe just shy of 20 people into their store. That'd be a pretty crowded scenario given it's a relatively small space. But now with new social distancing policies and the risk of COVID transmission, they knew they needed to reduce the number of people in their space at any given time. And they determined that 10 was the appropriate number, occupancy number, the optimal occupancy number to allow for that space. So what they've done is, one, the owner of the store and the management of the store can use the Density mobile app in real time to see how many people are in the store at any point in time, either historically or real time. They also can use the mobile app and the density platform to receive alerts or notifications when they're approaching or go over that 10-person capacity, so that they can, whether they're physically there or not, they can make sure that action's taken so that they reduce back down to 10 people and limit the density of people in that space. So going to the workplace use case, what we're seeing in a lot of our workplaces is that they're spending a lot of extra money and resources deep cleaning their spaces to make sure they're reducing any risk of transmission from, touching a shared object or space. And what's coming with those deep cleans are a lot of extra time, extra resources being spent, given so much corporate office space and spaces that people are occupying and wanting to clean. On the other hand, we're seeing, like Rob mentioned, that attendance and utilization of many corporate spaces is down and zero, actually, in a number of cases. And so what some companies are doing with their density data is identifying spaces that have been used and making sure that those receive the deep cleaning attention that they need. And then also identifying spaces where no one has visited at all since the last time it was cleaned, and that it doesn't make sense to spend those precious time and resources cleaning literally unused space. So in this chart, what we're looking at is on the left-hand side is, we're looking at peak occupancy. So on the left-hand side, you see that's from 0 to 200 for this particular set of spaces over time. And we're looking at peak occupancy by day. So that means this chart is showing the most number of people that were in that space at any given point over the day. So if we zoom into this particular day on the 20th, you can see that floor 5, floor 3, floor 4 all had people in those spaces. Maybe those are the COVID response teams or some essential staff that had to be there. Those are spaces where you absolutely want to focus those cleaning efforts. But then floors 2 and floor 6, no one has been on those floors all day. Those are floors that you might be able to tell your cleaning team, hey, ignore those. Literally no one's touched them. There's no risk of transmission. And you should focus more time and attention on the floors where people have been. Another way, other than cleaning, that some companies might use density data is if you do find that you have a new normal of occupancy in this, only mission critical people on staff, you might think about optimizing energy utility use to, make sure you're not spending any more, money on those services or wasting any resources if there are just fewer people in your spaces for the foreseeable future. Sorry, Rob, next slide. So the third case study we wanted to share is how some of our customers are using density data to monitor workplace policy compliance. And an example of how they were using it as the COVID crisis started building was companies were realizing, hey, maybe we don't want employees to feel like they have to come into work. Maybe we want to reduce the number of people in the office and the number of people feeling like they have to take public transportation into work. A number of companies, and I know especially this was really public with larger companies, started to do encouraged work from home policies. The idea was, we'll tell our employees, hey, you're welcome to work from home. Please work from home unless you're essential staff, so that we can reduce the number of people who are potentially getting exposed to this really dangerous disease that's going around. And what companies found, and actually density found this in our data as well, is that just encouraging employees didn't cause enough of a dip or a significant dip that those management teams, those workplace teams were expecting, to make them feel like, we've reduced density in our spaces enough to feel comfortable and have enough people working from home. So because of that, a lot of companies then moved to just totally shutting down, saying we've determined who essential staff are, and we're actually mandating work from home for the foreseeable future. And Rob, if you can go to the next slide. Now that most companies are in their steady state, where we see them using density for these kind of like work from home compliance policies is, one, to continue monitoring that the only essential staff are truly in the office, and evaluate where you can maybe further reduce to even more essential staff to limit exposure. And then two, at some point we're going to come out of this. At some point, people are going to go back to work. And what we've understand from some of the workplace teams we've talked to is that companies probably aren't going to turn on the floodgates and say, okay, today every single person come back to work all at once. They're probably going to leg in so that we're making sure to continue to monitor the health of employees as they start coming back to work, to give people sufficient distance and space from one another as they're coming back into their workplaces. And some ways that you can monitor this with density are through tracking utilization or tracking square foot used per employee. So in this bottom graph that Rob's showing, you have utilization in percentages of each of the spaces over time. And so the way that you get utilization and density is you set a target capacity for the space, and then it will calculate utilization based on the occupancy of that space over time. And so as a workplace team or management team, as you're coming out of the crisis, starting to have people return to work, you might set targets like month 1, we only want the space to be about 30% utilized, or we only want to achieve some sort of square foot per person ratio to make sure that we can't put a 6-foot bubble around every single employee, but we can ensure that a minimal number of people will be in the space, or an optimal number of people will be in the space, so that they can have appropriate space and room to spread out and not feel like they're so close together after we've just gone through such an unprecedented and really scary time.
So thanks, Leanna. Obviously, our customers are going through a lot right now, and we've been really excited because we've been able to help in some way. But what's been really interesting is we have sort of a front row seat to all that, and we've actually been able to learn a lot from our customers. It sort of prompted us to take a look at how we were handling the situation and actually use our own tool to make some adjustments. So really quickly, before I sort of talk about the results, we just went into our existing dashboard. We have every space at Density outfitted. Actually, really quickly, let me explain sort of how Density operates in general. So we're about a 50-person company, and we're super remote friendly. So we started our company in Syracuse, New York. Half the founders actually moved out to San Francisco, and we were essentially remote from the start. But we do have satellite offices and are headquartered in San Francisco. So we knew we had to address the situation, but we also knew we'd kind of be on the okay side of things. But our policy as it currently stands is essentially non-essential work from home policy. So unless you are critical to daily operations, do not go into the office. You are not allowed. On our production line's a big part of that. So we still need to manufacture products during this time, but we've set a capacity limit on that line. And we've also started to shut down some of our flex or co-working office spaces to optimize for cost. But so we made all of those decisions, one from learning from customers, but using our actual dashboard. So again, all of Density just outfitted to the nines with our own product. But we have a tool called Analytics, and it basically just allows us to run a report across all of our offices. So again, our big satellite offices are across San Francisco, Syracuse, and New York City. In Syracuse, we also have a hardware center, which is kind of separate from our core office space. But we're able to look at our occupancy data over time. I'll actually need to filter out weekends here. We are closed on the weekends, so I can filter out weekends and also filter out the hour of the day. And you can really see that gradual drop off and almost explain how we responded just through the data itself. But spikes in San Francisco reacted really quickly. So kudos, hats off to the San Francisco team. And then we saw a trickle down. So I'm going to jump back to the deck and just explain how that worked and some of the things we learned as a result of that. So one, we had a very similar scenario to that, to the customer who's had that suggested policy and mandated policy. And we were sort of proud of ourselves because we felt like we were on top of it on the third and said, hey, like, we're all smart people. Let's use your best judgment and work from home if you can. and almost nobody worked from home. So we were actually, we did monitor that whole week, and at the end of it decided to essentially mandate it. Um, and we did give people an extra day to just go and collect their things. And so it's not just like, hey, you wake up in the morning and, stay put. So people were able to go in, get their stuff, and we had to shut down some things. So there was some trickle down, and this yellow line is actually our hardware center, which I'll touch on it as well. But again, people just weren't reacting fast enough, and frankly, I was one of those people. So I needed that extra push to just kind of hunker down at home. But that yellow line is super interesting because that does need to stay up for us. We do need to continue to produce units. And we took this right from one of our own customers, sort of implementing that social distancing policy. And basically, we capped our factory at 3 people, and we implemented a push notification to ensure that if it spiked, the operator on call was alerted, and we just made sure that they were in fact sticking to policy. And the cool thing about that for us is like it's all anonymous, so we feel less weird about tracking people going in and out of space. We don't know who. There's no one to blame. We just alert the person responsible for that particular protocol that they might need to make an adjustment. And then lastly, my home office, my NYC office, has actually been closed. So we operate out of a co-working space. And New York City is obviously in a pretty unique situation countrywide right now. And for the foreseeable future, we don't really see us returning there. So this is a really great time to just look at that office data and make quick decisions to help save on burn. So we've effectively shut down and terminated that lease. It's a month-to-month lease. So that's one benefit of that particular those particular leasing terms. And we've shut down that office and don't plan to return anytime soon. But again, what we're excited about is like we know in general how people use that space previously, and again, learning from our own customers, we'll look at what those space requirements are, and we'll probably increase the space size when we all go back to work so that we feel safe. We're not breathing on top of each other, and hopefully can be responsible about our work environment. So that's it. So that's what we're doing. That's how we're reacting, and our customers are reacting. Want to open it up for Q&A, give you guys a chance to ask questions about remote work, our policy, and anything else that we've learned from the field.
One question to get started that came in through the Q&A forum, Rob, is can you tell us more about how the instant alert works with the dashboard, like how you'd set it up, how you'd receive notifications?
Yeah, definitely. Why don't I just demo that really quickly? So I can go into, let's say, our New York City co-working space. So we have this one portion of our dashboard just called Spaces. It's just a hierarchical view of our data. You can get data in real time. This is good to see. There's no one walking into our space right now. But it's really easy to set up an alert. So there's just an alerts button here, and you can add an alert. On the dashboard, everything's SMS. So I'm not going to put in my phone number here, but I essentially could very easily put in a phone number and then set an occupancy threshold for essentially as a trigger. If it passes that trigger, it'll notify me. There are some advanced preferences as well. So if you only want it to occur once or every so often, so you're not getting spammed with text messages. But that's how the alerting function works. On the phone, it works very similarly, in a very similar fashion. But given that it's native, you can take advantage of push notifications. So you can trigger push notifications for yourself and for others. And we also have entrance-based alerting as well, that our customer success team can help set up for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And for whoever asked that question, if you have a live instance and want to walk through it for your instance, please reach out to either your customer success manager or support at density.io, and we'll be able to help you get that set up. So more questions coming in. Rob, how about this one? How do you think about culture when remote? Like, what are some things that Density's put into place?
Oh man, I think that's a great question. I'll try not to go all day on that. Um, but yeah, culture is always something that's I think been important to us, and it's something that we had to deal with right out of the gate, right? So when we were a team of 6 people, we were split across the country at critical times, and we just kind of learned to build new habits, and those have totally carried over into the now. So we actually have, so for example, our New York City team, we have weekly drinks. In fact, this Thursday, tomorrow, at 7:30, we'll all just gather around Zoom and share a drink with each other, just to hang out. And it's less awkward than you think. You kind of get used to it, um, and it's a good time. We also have a company-wide session that's just called remote, and it's a voluntary attendance, and people can join, and you get to see people across the country that yeah, you would never see otherwise, because they're either on a separate team, different discipline. So I get to speak to our sourcing manager, a developer in Seattle, and I would never really have a chance to do that otherwise. So good casual conversation starter. We have all hands every week, and they're programmed to keep people informed. Um, and then I actually also hold like a personal webinar that people rarely come to, but I'll actually just live stream what I'm working on, and people can ask me questions about the company, about my particular project. Usually, people end up just talking to amongst each other, and I sit there quietly. Um, so those are little things, but we used to get together every now and then, and that helps promote trust, and helps people know there are real people behind the screen. So we too will have to rethink some of what we do, but all in all, it's just you really have to commit to being remote, um, and that's really helped us, I think, maintain a cohesiveness as a team.
Yeah, and someone else asked about what are some best practices to prepare for a remote workforce. And to echo some things and add some things that Rob mentioned is one, facilitating that face-to-face interaction or human interaction whenever you can. So even though, some days maybe people haven't taken time to get as presentable as they normally would, going into an office environment, still just turning on your camera. This is the real me. This is where I'm working. Having those like ad hoc sessions where people can come to and just join a video call, chit chat with employees, almost like grab coffee the way you would around the cafe or the water cooler, even though it is in a remote setting. Two, something that we do at Density, given that we have been a largely distributed workforce historically, is we use Slack, and we try to keep Slack direct messages to a minimum and keep everything in an organized channel to be discovered. So what's happening across the company is very transparent, it's discoverable, it's easy to loop people into, and that's a way to help people feel engaged and prevent silo information from occurring, or decisions happening without pushing to the right people or making the right people aware. And then the other thing is just taking more time for things like documentation. So writing down your policies, writing down your process. There's always room for us to improve, but it's somewhere that has been really important and really valuable, so that we can have a trusted true north of what we're working on, what the goals are, and it's easy for people to go and find that and take advantage of that, and not feel disconnected from what decisions are being made in the management team or something that's happening in a particular part of the organization.
Yeah, and many more. There's a lot of things I think we do. We could probably have a whole nother webinar just on sort of our how our team functions. Cool.
Yeah,
Any other
and
questions?
someone just
Oh,
wrote discoverable channel like MS Teams. So I'm not quite as familiar with how Microsoft Teams works, but when I say discoverable channel in Slack, I mean that we have almost no locked Slack channels. So anyone can go and see what's going on in any particular Slack channel across the company. And then two, for those what we call remote sessions where people can just ad hoc join and talk to each other and catch up and have more human interactions, we tend to use Google Hangouts for those. And we just have a few time blocks set at different times during the week. So it's on everyone in the company's calendar. And so it's just really easy to join or drop as you have time to connect with your colleagues. But great dialogue on that. One other next question for you, Rob. Do you foresee remote work performance monitoring and surveillance tools emerging as something workers will be required to accept?
Whoa, that's a really good question. I've thought a lot about this actually, and funny enough, a lot of densities developers, we install it in our homes, and but I sort of hope not. I think that's one major benefit. So I'm like a big work from home champion, and I think that's one major benefit of working from home is creating more of a balance in your life. And I think adding some kind of surveillance to monitor that takes away from that benefit of working from home. So I certainly hope not, but I know some tools do sort of monitor activity and attendance. So for example, conference calls, like that's one way people look to measure engagement for remote workers. So it's kind of already happening. And again, it all comes down to the employer and just working with a team that you trust. But I do hope we tone that down. I think the home is definitely where is a boundary you shouldn't cross. But I understand the anxiety around that, and ultimately it just needs to come down to trust. And that's hard to build, new habits to form. But I know our productivity certainly hasn't suffered as a result of being remote, and we definitely do not track when or where people are when they're at their home.
And something else, I think it's going to be tempting for employers to purchase or invest in those kind of technologies, and it's important on those of us who are leaders in our organizations, or even just people who have grassroots impact, to respectfully question and push back on those kind of activities, because really organizations should be outcome oriented. That's one of the benefits of working from home in some respect, is you can't rely on FaceTime, you have to rely on results. And if a company is literally monitoring how many hours you're on Zoom calls or how many hours you're on email, that doesn't necessarily translate to results, and that can create some really terrible cultures and like Rob mentioned, invasiveness in how your employer is encroaching on your life and your personal life. Something at Density that we've done is, I know we use Zoom, we love using Zoom, but Zoom is implemented or allowed for some additional incremental features of things like knowing exactly physically where the participant is, or knowing whether the participant is paying attention to your screen, like actually has clicked onto the Zoom call, or is potentially distracted and clicked onto another screen. We made a conscious decision to not allow those features, to turn them off. And that was because we wanted to respect the privacy of the individuals that are on our teams. We don't care from where they're working from. They should work wherever they're comfortable, and we don't want people feel like they're policed when they're on calls or meetings with one another. We want them to be participating because they should be participating. They want to be participating, and the outcomes that they're trying to achieve are important. That they'll be able to better do those by result of like the meetings or the other activities they're participating in.
And just to highlight something you said, Leanna, I think the focus on team leads is really important. If the way you're running or managing your work efforts isolates people who are remote, you're going to have a bad remote experience. So one thing we emphasize is, like, as a leader, don't have in-person meetings with 6 of your team members and one person remote as like a status quo. Why don't you take the meeting remotely sometimes to promote that behavior and let people know that that's okay. So a lot of it really does come down to setting good examples and ensuring you have buy-in from people responsible for how people work. Anything else? Lots of work from home stuff.
Yeah, good. That concludes the questions we have in Q&A. So if there aren't any more questions, maybe this is, we're a little past time. It's potentially a good time to wrap up. So thank you everyone for your time. Oh, here's someone wrote, do we track assets, e.g. technology equipment that people take home through our
No,
software?
no, we do not. Yeah, we're not an asset tracking software. We focus on people exclusively. So really looking at how people use space, not how they use objects. But that is something we do separately. It's an important part of I think work, but not us. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, sounds like we're good to wrap up. So thank you everyone for your time. Certainly feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or want to understand how you can better leverage your density data in this new, really unprecedented time that we're living in.
Cool. See you guys.
Bye.